Hello and welcome back to Ground Level Theology. It's been a week. It's been a week.
I know.
How's it
It's
going,
been a
Dave?
week. It's going. It's only been 1 week. Felt like a month. Felt like a minute and a
Dude, I
half.
am having so much fun with our podcast and just the subjects that we
Right?
will be covering
They
is
just keep
is
coming.
like I'm always excited to get back into it. So let's just dive into it. We have a
Yeah.
great one today. This one, believe it or not, I have actually gotten a few times, and it's not always like an apologetic question where an atheist is asking me, or something. Sometimes it is, but sometimes I
Right.
actually
Right.
get it from fellow brothers and sisters who, I think they overthink.
Yeah.
I
And
think
then,
they
well,
start to
yeah.
overthink it, and then they ask this question. And this question is, what's the difference between murder and killing?
Is there a difference?
Yeah, is there a difference? And we can kind of pose it this way to kind of flesh it out even more. There's murder. He kills someone in cold blood. We put him in prison. He gets the death penalty, and then we murder him. Right?
Right.
That's what it is. Don't
That's
don't
how
we
it
murder
works.
him? So like um doesn't that mean the executioner should be murdered? But then there would be another murder. So like, how's this cycle work? Is there
Yeah.
justice at all when we have murder upon murder upon murder? Um,
Right.
yeah, it just seems like there's a
Mm.
lot of murder, and so is what's going on here? So Dave, I'm gonna open it up to you right now, just to get us started.
Yeah. What a great loaded question. Once again. And I've been asked this question as well. Is there a difference between murder and killing? Because we have examples in the Bible where it's like,
Hmm.
and I've actually, maybe not the atheist specifically, but like, we made a joke about this isn't like I've had people that like maybe they don't believe the Bible, or they say, like, the Bible's got contradictions, it's messed up, doesn't make any sense. And I've had people use this argument or what they think is a good argument,
Yeah.
and they come up to me, you know, they've done it before, and they're like, "Ha, I got you. I caught you. Your God red-handed. You messed up, AA Ron." And
Yeah.
look, God commands, Moses, like, yeah, do not murder. And then however many years later, maybe a couple months, maybe a year or so later, Joshua, Moses' successor, is ready to enter into the promised land, and God like tells them to eradicate the Canaanites and like don't spare anyone, right? Like don't spare the men, women, children. Like I'm calling it out. Like God said that.
Hmm.
Um, and before we're like, God is so horrible. The wages of sin is death, and the Canaanites were pagan people, and he's
Right.
trying to preserve his people, and so it was symbolic of you need to be killing sin or it's going to kill you. Murdering sin or it's going to murder you. um, but all that to say is like, they try to use that as an argument. I caught you. God says you shall not murder. And then he's telling Joshua to murder. Or is he?
Yeah,
Is he
that's a
telling
big
Joshua
that's
to
a big
murder?
one.
Or is he telling Joshua um, to kill? Does the Lord yell at David, saying, hey, you're just, it's interesting that David was a warrior where he killed lots of people, and yet he gets yelled at when he murders Uriah. Uh,
Yeah.
and we're gonna
There
and we're
seems
gonna
like
get
a
into
double
that.
standard there. Yeah.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
this stuff. Like,
You're really
is there
pointing
a
it out.
double standard, or is there a difference between murder
Hmm.
and killing? And I think that's yeah. I think it's a good segue into like let's dive in and see, is there a difference between murder and killing? I think there is. I think that's biblical. I think exegetically, we're going to look at the different terms that are used
Hmm.
uh, and kind of show why they're actually not synonyms. They're not to be used synonymously, and maybe what we can do better about being clear in our preaching and you know, whether someone's a murderer or if they, maybe had to kill.
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
it's
So
gonna be
what
fun.
is the difference here? What do we got? Um,
Uh,
I know as far as the Old Testament's concerned, knowing that it's written in Hebrew, there are two distinct words for that. There's harak, which is killing, and then
right.
there's murder, which is ratzach. You
Yeah,
know,
gotta get that
you
phlegm.
gotta get that in there. But there's two different words for that, right? You
Mm-hmm.
can murder someone in cold blood. You can ratzach someone in cold blood, but in the scuttle of defending yourself, or even killing an animal, you can harak an animal. You can harak a person in war. You can harak someone in defending yourself, and
Right.
that's killing. And so the Old Testament, in the very words that it uses, just like we have murder and we have kill, there's a distinction there between the two.
Right. I agree. And what we're gonna get into, because also um we look at it, examples of it, um, kind of how it's used in the New Testament as well. Um, it's not to say that either um, is good necessarily,
Right.
right? Because we don't, and we'll actually get into this about, the Lord loves His creation,
Hmm.
and all people are made in the image of God.
Right.
Um, not all of us are God's children, but all of us are made in the image of God.
Yeah,
Um,
that's such a big point too.
just trying to that's and I don't want to go like that can be a rabbit trail too, but I just want to be clear, like all of us are made in the image of God. It's beautiful. The Westminster Confession of Faith calls it the light of nature, um, where we all possess if nothing else, with me and a non-Christian or me and an unbeliever, we still, if nothing else, we will have one thing in common. And we might even have other things in common if we like baseball or music or whatever.
Right,
But
right,
if
right.
but if nothing else, we are both made in the image of God.
Yeah,
If you're a human, and which is why, like the Constitution and other things, that's why you deserve dignity, you deserve respect. Free to disagree, but like I'm not going to just talk down at you. You just,
mhm,
because God made you. Um, all that to say, God cares about His image bearers.
mhm.
And so I don't think he wants to see any of us die. In fact, I know in Psalms and in Proverbs that Amber's grandmother had just passed away in the this past weekend, and the pastor brought this to mind that God um, is sad uh,
Yeah,
when he cares when his children, when his um, people die, when they're
yeah.
fallen. And we're like, they're with you now.
I
Like they're
mean,
with you. He's like, that's a good thing. They are with you in glory. But it's like, I don't like when my creation dies.
right.
They were supposed to live.
Yeah,
So
what
none
was
of
it?
it's good, but
John
I
like
think there's a difference.
11:35, Jesus wept at the funeral of Lazarus. And I always
Yeah.
point this out. Jesus is there to raise Lazarus.
Like he knows
Like
what he's
he
about
knows
to
his
do.
friend is about to be living, and yet as he walks in, he
Has
weeps.
compassion. He saw
Yeah.
that they were grieved, has compassion on them.
And also, like, it was never meant to be that way. We were never
Yep.
meant to eat the fruit of the knowledge of good and evil outside of maybe the time when we're allowed to, because, there's theologians that say it's actually there and God might have done it after a certain time when he sees that Adam and Eve have obeyed him and chosen to
Right.
love him instead. So we were meant to eat of the tree of life, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so I think Jesus looks upon them and just says like, man, it was never meant to be this way. Like we were never meant to suffer this. And yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I'm always reminded of that whenever I go to a funeral. It's like, yeah, Jesus went to a funeral. He went to the same thing and he cried.
Mm-hmm.
He's there with
Like,
us.
yeah, exactly. And so I'm just want I just wanted to bring that up. We're gonna look at there's a distinction, and not to say that we're just yay, as long as it's not murder, you're allowed. Like let's kill.
Yeah.
Like no, like you should be like for all like what Paul says. I want a quiet, peaceable life.
Yeah.
Where, but we know that we live in a world that is not quiet and is not always quiet and not always peaceable. And so, as much as it's up to you, be at peace with everyone. But some people might try to interrupt and ruin that peace.
Yeah.
And then what do you do? So
Well, let's go
get
ahead and
into it.
dive into this. There was one thing that you said that I just really want to emphasize because it's such a great point. And it's the point that we are all created in God's image. Like that's no small thing, right? I mean, the
Mm-mm.
Lord breathed his breath into Adam. He breathed not only from himself, within himself, but his very self, as in we are his image.
Right.
And he gives Adam his identity. Now, the same is true for Eve, not in the more intimate sense that we see in that very picture, but she also has the image of God, which is why Genesis 1 says, in his image he created them, male and female, he created them. It's in his
Mm-hmm.
image. But the one of the reasons why murder is so terrible is because it is a direct attack on the image of God. It is an attack on God himself because there are people who carry his likeness, his image, and one person is attacking the image of God. It's no small thing. And so as we think about
Mm-hmm.
murder, we think about it not just in the sense of a being who is attacking or injuring or obviously murder, but is doing wrong to another individual, horizontal, but it is a
Mm-hmm.
supernatural depth that is vertical, that a man is not only injuring a horizontal image bearer, but he is attacking the very image of the transcendent God. That, I think, is a
Mm.
foundation right there.
Ooh.
um,
Ooh. Keep going.
yeah, and
Yeah, you
so
got it,
I
man.
think that
Oof.
really lays the foundation, which is
Yeah,
why
dude.
if I just may introduce this passage as well. I really
Mm-hmm.
want to talk about Genesis 9:6, 9:5 through 6 real quick because on that foundation, we see here in Genesis 9:5 through 6, it says, "And your lifeblood I require a reckoning. From every beast I will require, and from man and his fellow man I will require a reckoning for the life of the man." And here's the big thing right here. Whoever sheds the blood of man, by man his shall his blood be shed. For God made man in his own image. So, all right, let's
Mm-hmm.
slow it down there because, when we read the Bible, we tend to like get cloudy here.
All
Let's
right.
work backwards. The foundation, God made man in his image. All right, let's go up to 6 real quick. Whoever
Mm-hmm.
murders, whoever sheds the blood of man, like Cain to Abel, by man shall his blood be shed. There's this theological concept that's going through Genesis at this point, and it's
Mm-hmm.
that when man sins, he affects creation. When Adam and Eve sinned, their sin didn't just stay with them. What did it do? It affected
Yeah.
the very creation in which they lived in. Because of their sin, now earth itself was corrupted and sinful and fallen, which is why it bears forth thorns and thistles and no longer waters itself and no longer keeps itself. And here's where we start to get natural disasters and stuff. And so as we sin, we start to corrupt the land. And the Lord is saying, whoever sheds blood, he's corrupting the land. And in order to redeem it, his blood is required. He must
Mm.
be killed to redeem that land. And so we have this source of justice now. If
Mm-hmm.
you murder someone, that person must be terminated because we're going to talk about the difference right there.
Yep.
But but I'm kind of alluding to that difference right there. But
Yeah.
he is required to die now. There's that justice there, and so
Yep.
and it's all based off of the image of God,
Mm-hmm.
because it's no small penalty to take out the image of God.
Mm-hmm.
I know I've been talking about talking. I feel like for a
Mm.
good minute, and
No, you're good.
I just wanna
I'm just
float it
listening.
back to you, man.
Um, and like, and here, this might, uh, like when we think of, yeah, whoever sheds the blood of a man, by man shall his blood be shed. I think of almost like Jesus's words, like when he talks to Peter. It's interesting, Jesus
Mm,
didn't yell at Peter for having a sword. Um, and he didn't yell at Peter for like, go, like, this shouldn't have been your natural instinct.
yeah.
But because it is like, hey, you're coming after unjustly, coming after my friend. He's going to be my savior, but he's my friend. Um, and he says, don't you know that those who live by the sword will die by the sword?
Wow. Yeah.
I think it's John 11:35. But don't quote me on that. uh, I think I'm wrong, but it feels good when you throw out a number.
Yeah.
Uh,
You're gonna
um,
make me look it up here.
yeah, look while you're looking it up. But we do know that Jesus did say that those who live by the sword will die by the sword. He doesn't yell at Peter for having a sword. And it's interesting. I don't think if Jesus were not supposed to be arrested and if he was not supposed to go to the cross, I don't even know if Jesus would have yelled at Peter for doing that. Necessarily, he might have. I'm just
Matthew 26:52.
like I said, 11:35.
I think
Matthew
that's the Jesus
26:52.
wept.
Oh, maybe that is Jesus wept. Okay, sorry, I got him confused because we're.
Yeah, it's
Thank you.
Jesus wept. I just said that. I think I
Sorry,
incepted it
you
into your
did.
head.
That man, you did. You did. Oh
Yeah.
God, that's kind of relevant now.
But I never
But
thought of linking those two passages in that way.
um,
That's a good point.
because and it teaches you like he doesn't yell at him for having a sword, but it's like be aware of like
Hmm.
what you're doing, and the consequences of your actions.
Right.
That like when you're living this way, and maybe not processing and taking a breath, because like and Jesus knows like it's almost like another get behind me Satan moment where it's
Yeah.
like I don't even know if Jesus would have yelled at him like why are you trying to protect me? It's like that's a good thing. Friends are supposed to stand up for each other.
Yeah.
Um, but in that moment, it's like Peter's just not getting like no, like they have to arrest me. Like this, it's better that they arrest me, and then I go and die. Otherwise, you won't be able to live.
Yeah, like
uh,
there's a whole mission here, Peter, that's going
that,
on that I've been telling you.
right, which is like that's what I'm trying to say. Like in that moment, it might not have been bad. In that moment, it was bad that he did what he did.
Yeah.
But in maybe another moment, it might not have been the end of the world kind of thing.
Right. Well, I
Um,
mean, I don't know if you're about to bring this up, but like when Jesus tells him, "Hey, if you don't have a sword, sell the sell the jacket on your back essentially to
mhm,
get a sword." And the very interesting thing about this, because like not only it's like, hey, if you don't own a gun, like sell your
mhm.
clothes to get a gun. It's like essentially
Yeah,
like,
it's like,
but
yeah, you can't conceal with that, but good
yeah,
luck. Yeah.
but the interesting thing here is that how they respond. They say, "We have these swords," so they put them before him, and they say, "Is this enough?" And Jesus says, "It is enough."
Yeah, like it was like Luke 24, Luke 26.
Oh
Some
man,
one like
you're making me look up verses now.
sorry, like no, but I
Yeah,
believe it's like where
you
he's
know
like, I
what?
think we have two, and he's like, that's enough. Like he didn't yell at them for having like they know they're on a road, they're like robbers, there's bandits, like it's amazing that they're with the sovereign Lord, the sovereign king, the one who is like ruler of the earth that every knee will bow, every tongue will confess is Lord. And like while they're there, he's still like, yeah,
Lu-
we
Luke
should be safe.
22:36. Luke 22:36.
Oh gosh, this thing. I get so close, but not. Like, it's so frustrating. It's like, like
Why have you not memorized your entire Bible? This
I
is
know
like
how.
This is like Bible college year one stuff.
I know, I know. Oh, see, ground level, and I smack the ground with my
Oh
face.
man.
Dude, like, yeah, I had a professor said, how thick is your Bible, Dr. Neuheiser? How thick is your Bible? I mean, like, how much can you readily quote or like reference?
Oh,
How
yeah,
thick is your Bible?
I'm a concept guy. Like I
And I'm
can I
like,
can bring out all these concepts, but I can't like I can probably
I
tell
know
you
it says
about
it
where they are.
somewhere.
Like in Corinthians, Paul says this.
Right.
Or,
That's what I'm trying to do better. Like Luke 24, 26. Oh,
yeah.
Luke 22. Dang it.
Well, yeah,
Uh,
what the interesting thing is when they put out the swords and he says, "Yeah, it's enough." They already own swords.
yeah, they were showing that they already had them.
Yeah, it was
Like,
like,
it's like,
they're walking around with swords. We start to think of Jesus as this hippie dude, but like no, there's robbers along the way. There's people that wish to do them harm, and you have swords so you can defend yourself against these people. It's a normal
hmm
practice. They had swords with them. Jesus says this. The disciples all bring these out. Hey, is this enough? And he says, yeah, that's perfectly fine. You're good. You're good with those.
cool. Do we need to get more? Like, but you know what? Like, I've heard it like in preaching, like to maybe help with the distinction, uh, like because there's times that
Yeah.
it's used synonymously. They're whatever. These are killers.
Mhm.
Um, as a like serial killer.
Oh, yeah, yeah,
Really
yeah.
serial
That's true.
murderer. You're a murderer. A serial killer. Like, what about someone that's like, what about a Navy SEAL? What prevents them like why aren't they considered serial killers?
Hmm.
Like
Yeah.
that's like because maybe and maybe not, but like I'm sure they might have been on missions where they might have had you know a couple casualties, but to put it
Yeah,
like
well,
keep it kosher. I'm sure they might have had to eliminate a couple people that were enemies.
yeah,
Um,
like those like army snipers, they have like, some odd confirmed kills.
like Chris
Like,
Kyle, right? Like let's think about like American Sniper, where
yeah,
he had like why is he not a serial killer?
because he did a lot more technically than I think what's
Than
the
like Ted
highest serial
Bundy
killer?
would or
Yeah.
something.
Yeah.
Like just to give an example, and really what it comes down to uh is like not to confuse and combine terms, but almost murder is like the unjust killing.
Hmm.
Murder is like, and maybe you've heard it before, like this, you've heard the term, like this was an unjust killing.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think that might be, at least conceptually, helps us to better understand that, killing, like murder is unjust killing. And killing by default might be just killing, which opens up a whole nother can of worms of if there's a difference between murder and killing, which I think there is, uh, then one must be good or right, and the other one's bad and wrong. And really in the Bible, we call that justice versus injustice, righteous versus unrighteous. Um, and so, can we have good killings versus bad killings?
Yeah, and
Meaning good killing versus murder.
I never really realized until just now, but yeah, I think our English actually does. I mean, it distinguishes, but it does a disservice because it does use it a little bit synonymously, and I forgot
Right.
about that, especially when you started to say like serial killers, and so I'm like, oh yeah, you know what it does use kill as in murder in our English language, where I think
But is it? Exactly. Like,
well I think that's where the Hebrew comes in a little bit more clear cut, because in the
right.
Hebrew there's a lot difference, um like as we just talked about, there's the murder and then there's the requirement of that payment of that person's life. That's
Mm-hmm.
not considered murder, otherwise he would be required to be killed. But that's a redemptive justice being carried out. And so, I mean, the best we can do is in this podcast to say that there's murder and then that there's just killing, right?
Yep.
And so we can talk about killing and try and make that distinction, maybe maybe artificially. for the podcast so that people understand the difference between murder and kill, knowing that the Hebrew and the Bible is a little bit more clear in its language. So
Uh,
there's the initial murder, and then you have to kill that person to redeem the
right.
land and essentially undo that curse. Um,
Mm-hmm. Well, and we see this, to bring up like we're pastors, right? How would I preach the gospel from Genesis 9:5 through 6?
yeah,
Um, and there's another verse I really want to look at that kind of gives examples in a second of like we have all the examples of murder in the Bible, and they're all
hmm
bad, but we have examples of killing in the Bible where it's not necessarily bad. Um, Murder's always bad, killing not always bad, and that kind of
yeah,
helps us out a little bit. But before we get to that one, if I was to preach Genesis 9:5 through 6, and I'm like, how am I going to find the gospel in this? Um, we actually find it. If you look at the example of Christ, you think about Paul, where we learn that the wages of sin is death, and and Christ pays for the wages of sin with death.
yeah.
And so and that's why I love John Owen's um, "The Death of Death in the Death of Christ." What a put like a
Theologians,
great,
man,
yeah,
they
theologians.
have all the
Yeah,
quotes.
yeah, and yeah, John Owen, great Puritan thinker and
Yeah.
pastor. The death of death in the death of Christ, like the irony that Christ's death purchased us life.
Hmm.
He killed death, if you will. He killed death um, by being murdered. See, like how I switched that
Yeah.
up because the Lord was murdered
Yeah.
unjustly, unjust killing,
Yeah.
unjust murder um, against a holy man, the most perfect man ever to exist. That way, unholy people. Um, wow, it's beautiful. So it's like, yeah, I could say like, yeah, whoever sheds the blood of man, um, by man shall his own blood be shed. And so Jesus died for the murderers,
Yeah.
those who have
Um,
been murdered and those who murder, and that we are made in his image and that we might be able to take on Christ's likeness. That's what just that was the man. It makes me think back to the child preacher. Come on, Duffy, preach. And I'm like, it's like
just 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 go.
do it on the spot. Just do it. I should have yelled it. Whosoever therefore sheddeth the blood of man. Oh gosh. Okay. Sorry. That digression. Um, but it's beautiful that yeah, he died for the murderer and those who have been murdered. Uh, but you know what? That's like an example of like he was murdered. Murder's bad, and he himself would tell people he did on the Sermon on the Mount.
Mhm.
Eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth. But you know the command: do not murder.
Yeah.
Um, or vengeance is the Lord's. And so it's like you don't just get to murder someone in cold blood, um, even though they might have wronged you or they make you mad. However, I think there is an instance, um, heaven forbid, but I think there is an instance where we see killing is not expressly for careful terms here, not expressly forbidden in all circumstances.
Yeah. Yeah.
I try to be careful with the terms. uh, but that's in Exodus. And I do know where that is. um, it's Exodus 22, 2 through 3. Do you have it? I think you can have it up to read,
You want me to pull it up to read? Yeah.
or
Um,
you can read it and just read it out loud. But if you got it, um,
yeah, I can pull it up right here. It says, if a thief is found breaking in and is struck so that he dies, there shall be no blood guilt for him. But if the sun has risen on him, there shall be a blood guilt for him. He shall surely pay. If he has nothing, then he shall be sold for his theft.
hmm, okay. Does that passage saying like so as long as he's not up before the sun comes up, we're okay. Or it's like as soon as the sun comes up, new day. So what now? What's that passage saying to us, Mike?
Well, that there is telling us about self-defense. I mean, the thief that comes
Self-defense in the
in,
Bible?
yeah, yeah.
How? What?
So I mean, if the thief comes in, breaks in the middle of the night, um, that thief is gonna do harm, right?
Mm-hmm.
I want to just take an aside here. What does Jesus say against the Pharisees when they say that he is um, doing miracles by the power of the demonic,
Beelzebul. Yeah.
right? He says
Yeah.
well, in one instance he pretty much says, "What are you guys, dumb?"
Yeah.
Like a house
Yeah.
divided cannot stand. But secondly,
Right.
he also says um, that in order to bind, I mean, in order to take pillage, essentially, the man must go into the house, overpower the man,
Mm-hmm.
bind him so that he can take the stuff in the house. So it essentially means that you must be against the person in the house. Well, let's go
Yeah.
ahead and take that idea and come back here. If the thief is breaking in and there are people in the house, he's going to have to do something about the people. So the people are in
Mm-hmm.
danger. So if you, as the head of the household, sees a man breaking in the middle of the night, it is required of you to not only defend yourself but your family. And
Mm-hmm.
so if in that you kill the person, you have no blood guilt. You are free from your consequences of your actions. You are in the right. You are perfectly fine. You have not murdered the man, but you have justly killed the man.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's a little bit of a difference, not a difference, but I think there's a little bit of a play here with the sun and stuff because I think if there is a sun, right, there and there's light, the person might be
Mm-hmm.
wanting to leave so as to not be identified. And so if you can
Mm-hmm.
identify the person, maybe you can let him ransack your house and you can go to the authorities, right? So I think there's a little bit
Right.
of a play there. But here we are in the middle of the night. This man's gonna have to bind you and maybe kill you, and you are on the spot here. This person has cornered you and now you must defend yourself. So there is the distinction in this passage as you just brought it up between murder and kill, because in this instance you are acting in self-defense and you are justly killing this man. And because of that, it's not murder and you have no blood guilt.
Exactly. Um, and I love that so well because like, and to give a real life example, you're a normal person. Let's say you have a normal 9 to 5 job.
Yeah.
That gives you eight. That's 8 hours that you can break into my house and steal anything you want. Um, I'm broke. There's nothing to steal, but that's 8 hours.
Yeah.
And so like, if you're coming in when I'm home, like I can only assume that you're gonna try to hurt me.
Yeah.
Um, because no one's around, and like maybe you could say nighttime, trying to sneak in, sure, but like do it when I'm not home.
Yeah.
And as a father, as a husband, and as a father, um, it is my job to keep my family safe.
Hmm.
That is my job, and it would, yes, it would be bad if you know horrible things happened and I just stood back and did nothing because it's like, well, you know, don't want to get into any trouble. And it's like, hello, like if you really love your neighbor, then you would want someone to save you too.
Yeah.
Um, and I do like to play on, if the sun's risen on him. I think that's even if like if you end up not killing him or he ends up like not being able, like not dying. It's interesting like that last part. So that we read verse 2 that there shall be no um blood guilt for him. He shall surely pay. And if he has nothing, then he shall be sold for his theft.
Yeah.
Uh,
And that
and
sun, yeah, that's like he's alive with the sun, right? Because
it- um, and there's still no blood guilt um for him. Or I'm sorry, like if the sun rises on him, then there shall be blood guilt for him.
Hmm.
meaning like, or you could even modern day, someone breaks in, you say, "Hey, what are you doing in my house?"
Yeah.
And maybe anything else,
And I,
go away.
and I
Uh,
think also like
and they
with
leave. You don't get to chase them out.
yeah,
Like,
but also like if they're coming through the door, you don't know what he's got in his hands or
have
if he
no
has
idea.
anything. But if he
Uh,
comes through that door and you see clearly he's got nothing in his hand, no sword or anything, or modern day he's got no gun or anything to challenge you with,
yeah, like we're not talking about
like
the drunk neighbor that got the wrong house.
yeah,
You
yeah,
know,
yeah,
he's like
yeah.
busting down his door thinking it's his because he got
It,
locked out.
if you can see him clearly, you can run him off.
Yep.
And so at that point, you're trying to murder someone.
You become the aggressor
Yeah,
essentially to put a to put a label on it. You
but
become the
the guilt is still there in as far as his theft. And so that's what that final part of the verse says because if
mm-hmm.
I mean he will pay.
Either way.
Right? Yeah.
You're gonna pay one way or the other,
Yeah.
essentially. And if he has nothing,
Then
meaning he
he's
can't breathe, or he's broke. Um,
which might be the case and if he's stealing.
well, like yeah, if you have to break into yeah someone's house, um,
So he's probably going to be sold into slavery.
hmm, man,
And hopefully it's on the last year of Jubilee.
right now, um, there's we have passages in the New Testament, where like Paul recollects, like in Romans, about you've heard not to commit adultery, you shall not murder, you shall not covet. He's essentially, when he's reiterating the law, um, as summarized by Christ, like the two greatest commandments, which really is a summarization of the Ten Commandments. And then even we have, James when we talked about our prayer episode. You know, you you fight and you quarrel because you're coveting things, or you murder, and so you have not because you ask not.
Hmm.
And it's interesting, like the words that they use for murder in those contexts are what we have, what they translate Ratzak in Hebrew in the Septuagint. So it's interesting that the New Testament word for murder is what they use to translate the Old Testament word for murder in the Septuagint, which is phoneuses, as opposed to the word that we were kind of going back and forth on earlier, apoktaneo,
Yeah.
which is killing.
It's so cool that we can kind of dive into this a little bit and
So both
really
I'm saying
see
both
it.
Hebrew and Greek
Yeah,
have two distinct terms, uh, that in any I'm real quick. English, we have two distinct terms: murder, killing. It was our fault for making them synonymous.
yeah, we blurred the lines, but
Yep.
in the original languages they're less blurry.
Very like
They're a
way
bit
less
more
blurred.
distinct. So I
Mhm.
mean, I guess that kind of really that really shows how much they're different, right? Because there is murder and then there is just killing. And not like you're just killing, but there is justice killing. There is a just kill. And that probably refers also to like killing for food, killing an animal,
Mhm.
killing for sacrifice, killing
Right, it's
like
not always people. You're correct.
yeah.
Hopefully
The
not.
and and I think you also brought it up too that when you're in war, at that point it's sort of like all the chips are on the table. You're not really murdering a person as much as, like I said, you're kind of gambling with your life in a war. Two
Mhm.
nations are coming together and they're saying that I will sacrifice myself if
Yeah,
you
I'm
aren't
living by the sword.
dispossessed. Yeah,
Yeah, I'm living by the sword. I know I might die by the sword, if you will. Like I know what I'm getting into.
yeah,
You're gonna be firing back.
yeah.
Like,
And I
uh,
think that's why we don't really talk about it. Sorry, I just kind of
you're
steamrolled you
good.
there for a second, but
You didn't.
it
I steamrolled you.
but it just brought to mind,
Unjustly.
we don't really talk about how many murderers happened in a war. We say how many casualties were there
Right.
of the war. And
Mm-hmm.
I think even there's that distinction that it wasn't murder as much as it was killings in a war. That war creates a special circumstance. Now, in some instances, you can murder, right? Because you can kill surrendered troops and POWs, and there's a lot of war crimes
Mm.
that can take place.
Right.
But when it comes to the battlefield, it's like it's war, it's killing. We're almost in a separate entity here. Um,
Right. Um, and there's even, like I said, I took a justice and war class at the Washington D.C. location um, for at RTS, and it was essentially RTS was amazing that you could once you were an alum, once you graduated, you can audit any course on any of their campuses for free, um,
Not
for free,
sponsored.
which
We
is
are
yeah.
we are not sponsored by RTS.
I wish I was. I want to be sponsored by RTS.
RTS, if you
I'm
could
wearing burgundy. Come
if you
on, like
can
help me
please
out.
reach out to us, RTS, we would love
I
to.
reach out to you. Oh gosh. Um, but like this was like one of the first lessons, real quick, and I'm just gonna
Hmm.
say it real fast.
Absolutely.
The just war tradition, and it's literally a moral framework to help us determine what to do when goods conflict.
Hmm.
Uh, you remember, like, focus on the terms here. A moral framework. We're talking about morality. So not just like tactics, like what's more strategic, not like what gets me the most power or whatever. What is moral?
Hmm.
Meaning what is right versus what is wrong. And there are procedures that have to happen before you declare war, and this might help us shed some more light and give more context to why some killings might be okay. Um, like when does a killing become a murder, if you will?
Yeah.
And I think that's a good question to ask. And so use ad bellum, it's JAB, it's the Latin juice, use really, ad bellum, or you can remember it as jab. But that really is the Latin for the question of when is it right to fight?
Hmm.
And it's amazing, but like uh, there's four things that have to take place. Right authority. Not just anyone gets to declare war. Not
Oh,
just
come
anyone.
on.
I know. Not just anyone gets to. You don't. No one gets to just kill anyone.
Right.
That makes it murder. Like just the average Joe killing another average Joe just cause the and then any other
Oh,
horrific
hold up. That
thing
that
news.
that just that just brought a
That's just the
light bulb
first
on.
one. There's
Yeah,
like
the
three more,
well, I
dude.
mean, this is a quick
Okay,
example. David and Uriah.
correct.
He had the authority. No one has the authority to just kill someone, not justice kill. No one has the authority to murder someone.
Like move them to the front line.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So I mean, there's that one right there. Okay, so keep going.
yeah, and that's an example. Like the war was justified. Moving Uriah to the front of the line was not.
Wow. Yeah.
And so we're gonna get there. That's like nuance.
Yeah.
Um, the second point, though, you need to have right authority. You can't. Not just anyone gets to do it. David was a king; he gets to do that. But the second one, and this is the big one, just cause.
Hmm.
You need to have a just cause or justice, if you will. Um, it's usually always a response to something that's always going on, and even preemption or prevention. It's like something it's already occurring. Like, am I preventing a murder? Well, it's like it's because I know that this might be a murderous area, or because that there are murderous people, and so even
Yeah.
if I'm thinking ahead of time, I only have to think of ahead because it exists.
I
Uh,
think it's that like that just reminds me of that classic conundrum for like a soldier. It's like you're a sniper, right? And you're looking down and you know that there's about to be an enemy there, and you have your squad and they're going into the streets, and you see a kid with a grenade or with a gun
Mhm.
walking towards them, and he's going to kill them if you don't take the shot. Like, what do you
Mhm.
do? Do you kill a quote unquote innocent kid? And in those instances, our soldiers, God bless them, they have to take the shot because they have just cause. Yes, he's a kid, but he's not innocent. And if he doesn't take his life, he will take more.
Correct. And man, like you sound like you already took like the class. You could have you could have done it, man.
No,
Because
I'm just
what
thinking of these rules and I'm like, this just jogging to mind all this stuff.
well and that's just because it like and self-defense or just like maybe it's because we're American, like and it's baked into our constitution. Like self-defense is kind of baked into this, but like three main like you need to have the right authority, you need to have a just cause, and there's actually like three main just causes.
Hmm.
Now this is like war, but like to rescue innocents, so to rescue the innocent, that's a
Okay.
just cause. To right wrongs
Huh.
is a just cause.
So would that
We
be like the Genesis 9:5 clause?
like Genesis 9:5, or
9:5.
and maybe like a modern day example, like the Holocaust, World War II, that we're gonna
Oh,
go right the
yeah.
wrongs that are done.
Ah, yeah. That
Like
makes sense.
this is bad. A lot of wrong is taking place, and we need to make right what is wrong.
Yeah, because we really
Um,
stuck our nose into that one.
you- uh, we did, and that
And it was
and
good.
then actually Pearl Harbor.
Yeah, that's true.
Actually,
That's true.
but okay, what okay, noses get stuck.
Yeah.
But and then the last one, adjust calls. And you got to be careful with this because you're not trying to necessarily play judge all the time. But punishment of evil. Evil
Oh,
does
okay.
deserve to be
Yeah.
punished.
So
Um,
that would be the Genesis 9
yeah,
6. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. And you're getting ahead of me. But it's like, yeah, you rescue innocence to right wrongs and the punishment of evil. So that way the judge or the executioner
Hmm.
is not also getting charged with murder because they are now justly killing the unjust killer.
I really like those nuances too, because those three, like, they really are distinct nuances to where, like, my example wasn't the second one, it was the third one. Like, it didn't
Hmm.
quite fit into that one because that was something distinctly different in its own scenario. And so, yeah, I really like those.
And so you have right authority. You need to have a just cause. So if you're not trying to rescue innocents, like okay, let's go back to David and Uriah, right? This is
Yeah.
fun. Let's look at him. Okay, did he have a just cause? We already know it's no.
No,
Um,
absolutely not.
was he rescuing the innocent? No,
No.
he was saving his own tail and he's putting him on the front line.
Yeah.
Did he right wrongs? He was kind of
No.
trying to, but he actually ended up creating more wrong.
He wronged wrongs is what he
Yes,
did.
correct. And the punishment of evil.
Yeah, I think
Yeah, yeah, bad, bad, bad.
he
David's being
failed
a
at
bad
every
boy,
level.
right? And this comes to the third part. Like, when is it right to fight? You need the right authority. You need to have a just cause, and you need to have the right intent. And the difference between having a just cause and right intent is the difference between wanting justice and wanting peace.
Hmm.
Right intent is we want peace. We want, and you think back to the just causes, we want peace for the innocent, like we want to rescue the innocent, right the wrongs. We actually want peace for the enemy. Like it's nice to be able to be reconciled with our adversaries. And that's a biblical principle, right? Love your
Yeah.
enemies. When a brother wrongs you, go to him, and it's good to be reconciled. Um, and it's interesting, wars, like when you think about World War One and World War Two, and then there's other world wars that happen all over the globe. Um, they are to be aimed at a victory in order to have a durable peace.
Yeah.
Like I think one of the reasons why we haven't had World War III yet, and maybe all the nuances of like nuclear weapons and the UN and all that stuff and NATO,
Right.
but like I think the reason why we haven't had a third world war is because like the US dropped the bombs
Yeah.
in World War II, you know?
Yeah.
And and you think about embassies, like there's something American in every single country that exists. And we are, the people that, think about Ukraine. Like people call us when they need help.
Yeah.
And because we've had, success. And now, that's a loaded term. Think about all the things that had to go into that and all the people that were lost to have success. Freedom isn't free, and peace is costly. And I just want to point out, we were looking at David and Uriah. He was trying to bring himself peace. Obviously, he did not bring peace to Uriah. Peace to the enemy, which is himself, and really ultimately he sinned against God. That comes later. He
Yeah.
recognizes it with the prophet Nathan.
Hmm.
Um, but it's interesting, like we can find not trying to get into the weeds, but the Paul says we wage war not against flesh and blood, but powers and principalities. He talks about spiritual warfare. And I think about Christ when he conquered sin and death, like the war against sin. Um, and it's actually really beautiful about what Christ did on the cross. Did he have the right authority to do that?
Yeah.
Right? Like, no one takes my life. I give it up willingly. Right? And then, but a just cause. Right? I've come to set the captive free. Slaves from the bondage of sin. I'm going to rescue the innocent in my eyes. I'm going to right all wrongs. I'm going to punish evil. Either I'm going to take it on myself, or you're going to have to stand before the throne, the judgment seat of God, and endure it yourself. And then there will be peace.
Hmm.
True peace that surpasses all understanding.
Wow.
Um,
He fulfills
dude.
all the requirements.
Mm-hmm. Because we're always asking that, like, is this going to bring more harm than good? Am I more likely, like, is it, like, those are good questions to ask. Like, I don't want to get involved. I don't want to step on any toes. I don't want to bother anyone. Um, and it's like you can end up causing more harm than good than if you took, like, the one person, eradicated the one evildoer, then, we saved the one, but at the cost of many. And I think, and that's, why maybe even with going back to the Joshua example, going into the promised land, eradicating sin.
Yeah. Because it says
It's
that
like,
too.
because the
It
Lord cares
says
about
that,
his people.
yeah. It says that the time of the Canaanites had not been up, so they weren't allowed to touch them. But then it says that
Mhm.
their sin had now overflowed. And so that they needed to be judged, and this was their judgment, that they were going to be essentially deported. They were going to be dispossessing the land.
Mhm.
And so Israel moving in was a judgment on the nations for their sin. It was a justice implement.
Mhm.
And we even see that against Israel
Yeah,
when
God's not
God,
unjust. He does it, yeah, to
yeah,
them.
he
Yeah.
does it to them too. He raises up the Assyrians to take on Israel. And essentially, what ends up happening is that the northern kingdom that is called Israel, because there's Israel and Judah
Mhm.
at that time because they're divided.
Right.
Israel is deported into Assyria, and so yeah,
Mhm.
I mean that's kind of that justice element right there. That the Lord isn't just causing violence out of nowhere, but He is using His right of justice, and yeah, He's fulfilling those that
Well,
sort of checklist that you brought up. I didn't memorize
I mean,
that.
that's even his character.
Yeah.
Like that God is just. like it's in line with his character. Um and then that's why even Paul can say again that God is both the judge and the justifier in Christ.
Wow.
He's the just and the justifier. Um because he doesn't just that's why Christ came, like he didn't get rid of the penalty. He just paid it so I don't have to, you know. Um
Yeah.
and so it's like there's a difference between murder and killing. And now here, I mean, I know we've been talking for a while. That's the physical angle. We're trying to bring all this down to the ground level theology, and we're trying to jam pack this. That's the physical aspect. When Jesus at the Sermon on the Mount talks about murder, he doesn't just talk about physical murder, does he, Mike?
Oh man. I wasn't even thinking about including that
Well,
element here.
you're welcome. If you hate a man in
Yeah.
your heart, you are guilty of
Murder.
Thesauruses.
Wow.
Not killing him, you know, uh, you won him. You're in your heart, he's as good as dead to you. You wish they were dead. They were gone out of your life.
Yeah. Wow.
Hatred. Uh,
Because it's that intent that you were talking about. It's that one of those things that you were
that's the
listening. It's that
second point.
intent.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you have just cause and then right intent, which is peace. Um,
That's
and it's
crazy.
like I don't want hatred. Think about hatred. I don't want peace for that person. I want pain, and that they're annoyed, and that their life, stinks.
You know, I that brought something up earlier, and I was gonna wait till after, and that just brought it up again. So I'm sort of kind of jumping in here,
You have to.
but yeah, I was as I was talking about it earlier. There's the whole just killing. Let's say someone comes into your household. It's the nighttime. You are allowed to kill them so as to preserve the peace in your household, so that no one else gets hurt. Right? You
Protect the
fulfilled it
innocent, right,
exactly.
wrongs, punishment of evil.
But
Yep.
there's a distinct difference between that and then you tie him up and you beat him to death slowly over the next couple hours. Like
Yeah,
at that
for
point you
sure.
murder, right? And so I was
Yeah.
just thinking about like how to distinguish between that between I have
Right.
to kill this person because he's going to kill me or and my family versus I'm going to beat him because he made me angry and I'm going to enjoy this.
Well, and do you know what the legal term that we don't say
I,
killing,
di- I
right?
didn't even know there was a legal
The-
term that.
what is something when someone dies but you weren't trying to murder them?
Oh, manslaughter.
Manslaughter.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Okay? Like I'm driving my car, the bicyclist decides just to, accidentally fall off the sidewalk. Boom. And I
I
and
didn't
and
think of that.
and that kind of scares me because I have those fears like when I'm just driving on the road, minding my business, and the
100%.
bicyclist, like it's your job, like you're driving, it's your responsibility to not hit the bicyclist. But what if they like swerve into you?
Yeah,
Like I'm like it, and what's like the big thing in like there's still a penalty. There's still, Genesis 9. Whoever sheds the blood of men, by man shall his blood be shed.
hmm
Like that's a real thing. Uh, but it's how do they determine if it's manslaughter versus murder? They're gonna ask me and try to evaluate my intent.
yeah, that's
Was it
wow.
my intention
Yep.
to harm this person, to hurt them? Um, like or
Beyond
yeah, like
measure too, because we
yeah,
have those laws too. Like, um, not every state has it this way, but if someone is coming in to steal and do harm, I can shoot them. But if
yeah,
they are
beyond reasonable
running
doubt.
away and I shoot
Mm-hmm.
them in the back, now it's my fault.
Right, because like and like we think about like especially now we're getting into the weeds of like what self-defense is. But like,
Right.
I think the legal definition of self-defense is the threat
Right.
of
Is
death,
imminent.
the imminent threat of death or great bodily harm to you or others.
Right.
What a wonderful definition.
But I was just
The
yeah, I was
threat,
just thinking like
and like the
because
threat is leaving.
the intent in that he is trying to leave, he is no longer harming you. Now you just wish to harm him.
Right. My intent is to get him.
Yeah.
And like, don't do that. Don't, because his
The
intent is
sun
to
has
now,
gone up.
yeah, the sun has gone up. There shall be blood guilt for him.
Yeah.
As opposed to like, you know what? Like, okay, I need to call the police because hey, I had a breaking and entering. Guy came in. I said, hey, what are you doing here? And that kind of scared,
Hmm.
sense into him, and he ran away. And now like he's gone, he's alive, but like, yeah, he still needs to pay for something. Like you're not allowed to break in and
Yeah.
then just get off scot free. Like you live, and it might not be the same thing as if you actually stole something or if you tried to hurt me, but like you still broke in. And so you should pay for your theft and maybe sold into prison, if you will.
Yeah.
If you
I
will.
really do think we
Um,
should bring this back, you know?
yeah, yeah, we love the Lord and we love the law of God.
I'm just
I
saying
mean, think
it's
about
right
it. This is
there. It's
Exodus
right there.
22. Exodus 20 is when we're given the Ten Commandments, and this is 2 chapters later. So it's like in the context. Not to
Now,
mention, we don't have time for it here, but Deuteronomy, everyone, if you need a commentary on the Ten Commandments, read the book of Deuteronomy.
yeah.
That's literally what God did. He gave you a commentary on the Ten Commandments.
Well, speaking of commentaries, because
Wonderful. Yeah.
we can keep going, man, and
Oh, we could.
I just noticed the time.
Not to
W-
beat a dead horse, but
Not to kill a dead horse.
not to kill two birds with one stone. No.
Well, we can segue off from there from recommending a commentary to now just kind of some recommended resources. Um, I know you have some actually related to this. I think you have a
A little bit.
couple books or articles. What do you recommend?
Yeah. This is honestly this is probably a catch-all. It's called Providence, a Journal of Christianity and U.S. Foreign Policy, and you're kind of like, what? A Journal of Christianity and U.S. Foreign Policy. What does that have to?
Oh,
And it really gets into, at least in the context of like um, wars and is killing okay? Um, Murder's never okay, but is killing okay? And it kind of gets into honestly, it's a great resource that gets into the weeds on purpose to really dissect and look at every angle, if you will, of kind of like what we looked at with the
what's that called
um,
again?
Providence, a Journal of Christianity and U.S. Foreign Policy, and I give the title because it's written by a bunch of different authors. It's a bunch of different articles that have been compiled, and I think it might not be monthly, but I think it's quarterly or biannually.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
Um,
I was looking on Amazon to see if I could pull it up for the folks, and I couldn't
yeah,
find
it's
it.
not a book; it's a journal. It's a collection of journal articles.
Got it.
And so it's all labeled Providence. But it's a bunch of great thinkers that really kind of been like, Christian people that are like, this idea,
Oh,
um,
you're breaking
what
up a
they're
little bit.
writing about, because I don't like breaking up.
We can change. Don't worry. No, you're coming through fine.
I don't want to break
Solidly.
up. Okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. So, but it's a wonderful publication, a compilation of a bunch of different thinkers where is there a difference between murder and killing?
Hmm.
really undergirds all, like, it's a presupposition, if you will. It's a preconceived notion.
Hmm. Okay. Well,
It
yeah. Yeah, you were.
this is just common knowledge for them.
Yeah, you're really breaking
Um,
up now. Um, I think I think we're losing signal here. I think Skype's really starting to not function here in the nighttime. But do you want to just go ahead and just list your recommended resources?
yeah, that's the one.
Oh, can
Providence, a journal of Christianity and U.S. foreign policy.
and what was the other one? Or did you have another one? I thought.
Like, no, like that, I'm sorry,
Oh,
y'all.
okay.
This is like we're humans again. No, we stayed human. But like, it's just a compilation. It's like 5 or 6 different journal articles in one.
Oh,
So,
okay.
so
Yeah.
it's good than just listing like one author. It's just a bunch of thinkers that they take murder being different from killing as a they already understand this, they recognize this, they already have this view in mind in their writings because they're talking about war.
Hmm.
And if war can't be justified, then we should never have war.
Yeah.
And so if we have war, then there must be something okay about it sometimes. And so they just talk about how they determine when it is okay and when it's not, using those 3 principles we already talked about earlier.
Hmm.
So it's just something, it's fun, something that's extra biblical, something outside the Bible that's still helpful and informative.
Yeah, it sort
That's
of
all.
brings in a practice of
Yeah,
being
I
able to
don't read
identify that.
everything. Yeah, not everything I
Yeah.
read is necessarily, straight up Christian all the time, Christianese. So it's just something different.
Wow. Go ahead and look that up, folks, if you're interested in this topic. That sounds like a phenomenal resource. And apparently, it's a journal. So that means it's not just one book. You can continue to enjoy it over and over again
Yep.
with new articles. And because they're new articles, they have awesome different authors with different perspectives that they're all bringing to the forefront. And so journals are fantastic. So that's kind of a resource that keeps
Different
giving.
one. Yeah.
Not along those lines. Mine is a little bit off topic, but I actually recommend this is sort of a series. It's the Urban Legend series, and it's by B&H Academic. But this is an urban legend series. I'll go ahead and show you a lot of them. But you have the urban legends of the Old Testament. You have the urban legends of the New Testament. You have urban legends of church history and urban legends of theology. And those are all the ones that they've done so far. I'm sure they do plan on doing more. But I just really enjoy these urban legends. They have like about 40 of them or so. And just to name a few, now what are these urban legends? Do they have like do they find these urban legends in the Bible? No, no, no. They're more of like misconceptions. We can almost think of these as like misconceptions of the New Testament, misconceptions of the Old Testament, misconceptions. And so I really like these because they kind of eat away at some of the very popular misconceptions that we as Christians still believe. And so one of the big ones,
Mm.
number 7, taking the Lord's name in vain refers to using God's name as a curse word. Huge one. I read this article. I thought it was phenomenal the way that they wrote it. Number 10, the Mosaic food laws were about healthy living. This one right here is probably my
Mm.
favorite one of the Old Testament, and it's number 11. It's one I didn't even realize was a misconception or an urban legend, but I really thought it was something, and I realized it's not even in the Bible. Number
Mm.
11, the high priest wore a rope around his ankle on the Day of Atonement. That one.
What?
Wow. Yeah.
That was on my final. No, I'm just kidding.
Well, I've heard it from
Just kidding.
from pastors, and I really took it in as my own. As like, yeah, that happened because if he was not if he was not clean, if he did not follow the instructions, and he came before the Holy of Holies, he would be struck down. And what do you do with the body? Because only he can go into the Holy of Holies on
Mhm.
that year.
Just killing.
So yeah, so it was like you put a rope around his ankle so they can pull him out. But that's not true. That's an urban legend. That's an urban legend of the Old Testament. So we have a lot of misconceptions here, and we
Mm.
have David Croteau and Gary Yates, one of my professors. Uh, he helped edit this, and this is a phenomenal book, and I recommend the entire series. As you can see, I own the entire series so far. And I just think it's great. And it's one of those things that really not only helps you kind of eat away at some of the misconceptions, makes you realize you should be a noble Berean before taking everything in. And
Mm.
then, two, you start growing in maturity. Like you
Oh.
start really taking in, hey, what does the Bible say versus what have I heard? Right.
What
And
has
so,
been said and what does it say?
yeah, and so I really enjoy the series. The whole killing and thing I'm sure is in here. Um,
I'm buying it now. I'm about to go on Amazon, I'm buying it now.
so yeah, that's what I recommend. I guess we do have something that has like more than one resource. You know, you took on a
Hmm.
journal article, so I brought out a series.
Nice. You brought us serious. That's how we roll. That's how we do it.
Yeah.
You
Well,
know.
anyways, let's go ahead and wrap it up here. Dave, do
Mm.
you want to send us off or shall I?
You can do it. Sorry, the
Okay.
delayed answer's like, you got this, buddy. Oh, we're breaking up. Sorry, bye.
Yeah, oh, that's true. That's true. Folks, I often like to put David on the spot. I don't tell him about these things. I just throw it on him and see how he'll react. But it's
And I
true.
like the
Yeah.
deer in headlights. I'm like,
Well,
you have the power. I don't have the authority. I don't have that authority to go boop. You
well,
have the
anyways,
software.
guys, we really enjoy doing this. We really enjoy talking. We really enjoy bringing all this education to you guys at the ground level. We're here to just have a conversation with you. And so, if you guys are enjoying this podcast, you guys are enjoying this conversation and all the subjects, don't forget to like. It really does help us. And don't forget to hit that notification button, hit that subscribe button so you can get more of this content and get notified when our episodes drop every single Wednesday at 5. And then if you have any ideas about future episodes or maybe you want to hear more about this subject, just don't forget to write something down in the comments.
Mm,
But in any
yes,
case,
please.
we really enjoyed this time with you, and we look forward to the next week's episode. So we will catch you next week.
See ya.